When you're dating someone avoidant, the biggest trap people fall into is thinking, if I just try harder, they'll come closer. No, they won't. The harder you try, the more they pull away, because avoidants crave independence, and every time you chase, you confirm their fear of losing it. So instead, you need to do these 5 things. First, stop chasing and start matching energy. If they take 2 days to reply, you don't respond in 2 minutes. Second, create space without playing games. Don't punish them, but let your life be so full they feel lucky to be part of it. Third, lead with certainty, not anxiety. Don't make every conversation about where is this going. Make it about enjoying the moment with confidence. Fourth, give value, not validation. Don't send 10 texts hoping they'll say something nice back. Bring energy that makes them excited to hear from you. And fifth, hold your standards like they're non-negotiable. If they're not showing up, you don't beg, you move. Do these 5 things and watch how the dynamic changes. Not because you're trying to control them, but because you're finally controlling the only thing you can. When you find yourself with someone who has avoidant tendencies, the instinct most people have is to close the gap. You feel them pulling away, you sense the distance growing, and suddenly everything in you wants to move closer to make up for that gap. You send more texts, you try harder to make plans, you put in more effort than ever before because in your mind, this feels like the way to keep the connection alive. But the problem is, that instinct is working against you. The more you chase, the more you feed the very thing that makes an avoidant pull away in the first place. Avoidants value their independence, their sense of control over their space and time, and when they feel that someone is infringing on that, they don't move closer, they retreat even further. Every time you move faster than them, every time you show you're willing to abandon your own rhythm just to match theirs, you lose the one thing that actually makes you attractive, your own sense of self-respect and balance. The goal isn't to punish them or to start playing manipulative games. This isn't about ignoring them just to get their attention, because that's still reactive. It's still about them. Instead, it's about reclaiming your center and making sure that the energy you give matches the energy you're receiving. When they take 2 days to reply and you respond in 2 minutes, you're creating an imbalance that feels desperate. And desperation isn't attractive, not just to them, but to anyone. When you slow down and match their pace, you send a powerful message, not through words, but through actions, that you have a life that's already full and that their behavior doesn't throw you off course. That message changes everything because avoidants feel safest when they know the other person isn't trying to consume them. Matching energy shows that you can engage with them without clinging to them, and that makes you magnetic because it respects their need for autonomy while honoring your own value. It's important to understand what matching energy looks like in practical terms. It doesn't mean you wait exactly as long as they did to respond, or you keep score like, they took 5 hours, so I'll take 5 hours. That's just another form of obsession. Matching energy is about syncing your actions with your own priorities instead of dropping everything for someone who isn't doing the same for you. If they take a while to reply, use that time to do things that enrich your life. Fill your day with things that matter to you so that when you do reply, it comes from a place of abundance, not emptiness. If they cancel plans, don't sit around sulking. Make other plans. Show them and yourself that your world doesn't revolve around them. That isn't cold, it's healthy. It keeps you grounded in your own reality instead of spiraling into theirs. When you start matching energy, something powerful happens. You begin to feel more in control of yourself, and that changes the way you show up. Suddenly, you're not anxiously waiting for their next move. You're living your life and inviting them to be part of it. That shift creates a new dynamic where they see you as someone who isn't a threat to their independence, but still brings value and excitement when you're together. And often, that's exactly what makes an avoidant lean in. Not because you forced them to, but because you stopped chasing them out of fear and started valuing yourself enough to meet them where they are without losing who you are. Creating space without playing games is one of the most misunderstood strategies when it comes to dealing with someone who has avoidant tendencies. The moment you hear the words create space, you might think it means ignoring them, withdrawing completely, or giving the silent treatment to get a reaction. That's not what this is about. Playing games is manipulation, and manipulation always comes from fear. It's a way of saying, if I do this, maybe I'll trick you into wanting me more. But the truth is, manipulation never leads to genuine connection. It only creates anxiety, both for you and for them. What we're talking about here is something completely different. It's not about withholding attention. It's about intentionally creating balance in your life so that the relationship doesn't consume all of your mental and emotional energy. Avoidants often feel suffocated when they sense someone's entire sense of happiness depends on them. The irony is that the more someone tries to hold on tightly to an avoidant, the more the avoidant feels the need to run. That's because they fear losing their independence, and they associate closeness with control. When you create space without games, you remove that pressure. You allow the relationship to breathe. You show them that you're not trying to trap them, and that sense of freedom is exactly what makes them feel safer around you. But the key here is that the space you create has to be genuine. It has to come from you prioritizing yourself and your life, not from sitting around pretending to be busy while secretly waiting for their message. So what does this look like in practice? It means saying yes to your life even when you're dating someone you really like. It means planning things that excite you, spending time with your friends, working on your passions, doing the things that make you feel alive outside of this person. It means when they cancel plans, you don't sulk and spiral. You pivot. You decide that your time still matters and that your happiness isn't going to be dictated by someone else's availability. This isn't about punishing them by disappearing. It's about showing up for yourself so fully that you never lose your sense of identity in the process. Because that's where so many people go wrong. They abandon their life to revolve around someone who isn't even asking for that level of devotion. And then they feel resentful when that person doesn't appreciate it. When you create space this way, you become more attractive without even trying, because there is nothing more magnetic than someone who has a full life. When you're not constantly available, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you genuinely have things going on, it shifts the energy in the relationship. Suddenly, they see you as someone with depth, someone who doesn't need constant reassurance, someone who can stand on their own. That sense of independence doesn't push an avoidant away. It draws them closer because now they feel that being with you won't cost them their autonomy. They feel like they can be close without losing themselves, and that's the sweet spot for an avoidant. But beyond how they feel, think about how it makes you feel. When you create space for yourself, you feel grounded, you feel stronger, you stop waiting for the next text to decide how your day is going to go. Your mood stops being dictated by their actions. And that changes everything, because when you're in that state, you're not just creating space for them, you're creating space for yourself to breathe, to think clearly, and to actually enjoy the relationship instead of obsessing over it. That's what real confidence looks like. It's not about saying, I don't care about you. It's about saying, I care about me too. And when you live from that place, the energy between you completely shifts. Leading with certainty, not anxiety, is the difference between being someone who inspires connection and being someone who unknowingly drives it away. When you're dealing with someone avoidant, your instinct might be to constantly check in, seek reassurance, or read into every little thing they do. You start asking yourself questions like, are they losing interest? Did I say something wrong? Should I bring up where this is going? That anxious energy doesn't just live inside your head. It shows up in your tone, your messages, your body language, even in the way you ask simple questions. And the reality is, people feel energy more than they hear words. If you're coming from a place of fear, they'll sense it. And when someone who is already afraid of losing their autonomy feels that anxious pull, their natural response is to retreat even further. Leading with certainty means you operate from a mindset of security, not scarcity. It's the belief that you are enough, that you bring value, and that you're not auditioning for a role in someone else's life. You're deciding whether they get a role in yours. When you come from that place, your behavior shifts dramatically. You stop over-explaining. You stop sending a second text because they didn't reply fast enough. You stop asking, do you still like me? And instead focus on whether you like how they're showing up. That doesn't mean you ignore your feelings or pretend you're invincible. It means you ground yourself before you act so that your decisions come from clarity instead of panic. Certainty shows up in the smallest ways. It's in how you communicate. Instead of saying, hey, just wondering if you still want to hang out, no worries if not, totally fine either way, which screams insecurity, you say, let me know if tonight still works. Simple, calm, direct. It's in how you respond when plans change. Anxiety says, why did they cancel? Are they pulling away? Do they not like me anymore? Certainty says, okay, thanks for letting me know. I'll make other plans. That response isn't cold, it's confident. It sends the message that you value your time and that their decision doesn't shake your world. That kind of energy is powerful because it creates emotional safety. Anxious energy creates pressure. Certainty creates calm. And for someone who is avoidant, calm is what makes them feel safe enough to stay. Leading with certainty also means you take ownership of your standards without making ultimatums. Anxiety tries to control by clinging tighter. Certainty doesn't control, it chooses. If someone consistently shows you they can't meet your needs, certainty doesn't beg for change. It decides whether this relationship is still worth your investment. That's attractive, not because it's a game, but because it's self-respect. Avoidants respect people who respect themselves, even if they don't always say it. And when you hold that energy, you're no longer the person waiting for their behavior to define your worth. But here's the most important part. Certainty isn't about faking confidence. It's about building it from within. You can't just slap on affirmations and expect to feel solid if your entire life revolves around their attention. You build certainty by creating a life that excites you, by knowing you bring something meaningful to the table, and by reminding yourself that losing someone who can't meet your needs is never really a loss. When you live from that place, your actions naturally reflect strength. You don't chase, you don't overthink, you don't shrink yourself to fit what they want. You lead with calm, clear energy, and that is what allows you to create a connection without losing yourself in the process. Giving value, not validation, is one of the most powerful mindset shifts you can make when you're dating someone with avoidant tendencies. Most people, without even realizing it, fall into the trap of seeking validation in every interaction. You send a text and wait for the reply like it's going to tell you whether you're enough. You craft the perfect message, not because you genuinely want to share something fun or meaningful, but because you want a response that makes you feel wanted. That constant need for reassurance creates an invisible pressure on the other person. It makes them feel like every time they engage with you, they're stepping into a space where their words or actions will decide how you feel about yourself. That's exhausting for anyone, but for an avoidant, it's suffocating. They start associating connection with obligation, and when that happens, they retreat even more. When you give value instead of seeking validation, everything changes. Giving value means your presence adds something to their life. It means every interaction with you feels like a bonus, not a burden. You're not texting them because you need them to make you feel better about yourself. You're texting because you have something exciting to share or because you genuinely want to connect in a way that feels light and enjoyable. There's a big difference between "I hope they reply so I feel good" and "I want to make them smile today because I enjoy doing that." One is neediness, the other is contribution, and people can feel the difference instantly. Think about what value looks like in practical terms. It's bringing positivity into a conversation rather than unloading every insecurity. It's being curious about their world instead of trying to make them constantly reassure you about yours. It's sending a message that makes them laugh because you want to share a good moment, not because you're testing whether they'll respond quickly enough. When you operate from this place, your energy shifts. You stop keeping score. You stop analyzing every emoji and response time. Instead, you're focused on what you bring to the table, and that makes you stand out in a world full of people who are silently asking, "Do you like me enough yet?" Avoidants, more than most, are hypersensitive to pressure. They want to feel free, not trapped. When they sense that every interaction is a test of how much they care, they start pulling back to escape that pressure. But when every interaction feels like an opportunity to share something good, something light, something that makes their day a little brighter, they're drawn in without even realizing it. You become a source of relief instead of stress. And that's when connection starts to feel safe for them. They start looking forward to hearing from you because they know it won't come with strings attached or an expectation they're not ready to meet. Giving value doesn't mean overgiving or bending over backward to please someone. It doesn't mean suppressing your needs or pretending you're happy when you're not. It means showing up as the best version of yourself without making the relationship a project that needs constant reassurance to survive. It's sharing your humor, your insight, your curiosity. It's planning experiences that feel good for both of you instead of waiting for them to always take the lead. And most importantly, it's remembering that your worth isn't something they have to validate. It's something you already own. When you come from that place, you stop trying to pull love out of someone and start creating moments that make love feel natural. And that's what makes you unforgettable, not because you begged for attention, but because every interaction with you felt like something they wanted more of. Holding your standards like they're non-negotiable is one of the most important principles you can embrace when you're with someone who has avoidant tendencies. What usually happens in these dynamics is that the person who wants more closeness begins to compromise little by little. At first, it's something small. You let it slide when they cancel plans last minute because you tell yourself they're just busy. Then it's them going a day or two without texting. And instead of expressing what you need or stepping back, you compensate by sending even more messages to keep things alive. Before long, you've lowered your expectations so much that the version of you who entered this relationship, the one who had clear boundaries and standards, is almost unrecognizable. You've traded self-respect for scraps of attention, and the truth is, no relationship built on that trade will ever feel good. Holding your standards means you never abandon what matters to you just because you like someone. It means you don't start rationalizing behavior that you know deep down isn't okay. If you value consistency, you don't talk yourself into accepting inconsistency just because you're afraid of losing them. If you value communication, you don't settle for silence because you think that's all they're capable of. The moment you do that, you start teaching them that it's okay to give you less. And once someone learns that, it's incredibly hard to change the dynamic. Avoidants especially often operate from a fear of being consumed. So if they sense that they can give the bare minimum and you'll still stay, they will keep their distance because there's no reason for them to lean in. Why would they move closer if they're already getting the benefits of you being there without having to show up in a way that feels vulnerable for them? Your standards are the filter that protects you from relationships that can't meet your needs. They're not demands and they're not ultimatums. They're simply the truth of what you require to feel safe, loved, and respected. And here's the thing. Standards only mean something if you enforce them. It's easy to say, I need someone who communicates. But if you keep chasing someone who doesn't, those words are empty. Real standards are backed by action. That means if someone repeatedly crosses a boundary or fails to meet the baseline of what you need, you don't beg them to change. You make a decision about whether this relationship still works for you. That's not about punishing them. It's about honoring yourself. When you hold your standards with that kind of certainty, you create a completely different energy in the relationship. Instead of being someone who anxiously clings and accepts less than they deserve, you become someone who calmly knows their worth and is willing to walk away if those needs aren't met. That energy is powerful because it signals confidence, and confidence is magnetic. It tells the other person that being in your life is a privilege, not a given. And the truth is, people value what they have to earn. When you make it clear through your actions, not threats, not drama, but calm, consistent behavior, that you will only stay in situations where your needs are respected, it forces the other person to step up or step aside. Either way, you win because you're not compromising the core of who you are just to keep someone who doesn't value what you value. Avoidants often test boundaries without even realizing it. They want to know if they can keep their distance and still have you there whenever they want. If you allow that, you reinforce their fear that closeness equals loss of control, because now they know they can hold all the power and you'll bend around them. But when you hold your standards like they're non-negotiable, you send a completely different message. You show that connection with you comes with mutual effort, not one-sided compromise. And when they see that, two things happen. They either rise to the occasion because they realize your value, or they leave. And either outcome protects your self-worth and keeps you aligned with what you truly deserve. There's an interesting dynamic that happens when you decide to focus on building emotional safety instead of forcing emotional intensity. Many people think that in order to connect with someone, especially an avoidant, they need to create fireworks, intense passion, and constant closeness. They believe that if they can just make the moments together big enough, exciting enough, or intimate enough, the other person will feel something so strong that they won't want to pull away. But that's a dangerous misunderstanding of how real connection works. Fireworks fade. High intensity always crashes because it's unsustainable. And for someone avoidant, that intensity doesn't feel romantic. It feels like pressure. It feels like there's no room to breathe. And when they feel that, their natural instinct is to run. Building emotional safety is the opposite of that. Emotional safety isn't about proving how amazing you are or creating big romantic gestures that make the other person feel overwhelmed. It's about consistency. It's about showing up in a way that feels calm, steady, and predictable. Not boring, predictable in the sense that they know who you are and how you'll respond. They know that if they open up to you, you won't weaponize it later. They know that if they need a little space, you won't spiral into panic or punishment. That kind of emotional security is rare, and when someone feels it, they begin to associate you with peace instead of pressure. Think about the last time you felt safe with someone. It probably wasn't because they gave you the biggest compliment or swept you off your feet with some grand gesture. It was because they were consistent. You didn't feel like you had to guess what they were feeling every second. You didn't feel like one wrong move would set them off. That sense of stability creates room for vulnerability, and vulnerability is what creates real connection. For an avoidant, this is even more critical because they already associate closeness with the fear of losing themselves. When you provide a space where closeness doesn't equal chaos or control, they relax. They feel like they can move toward you without the cost of losing their independence. Creating emotional safety starts with emotional regulation, yours, not theirs. You can't control how they act, but you can control how you respond. When they pull back, do you chase harder? Do you start sending passive-aggressive messages or long paragraphs about how they're making you feel? Or do you take a breath, remind yourself that their behavior doesn't define your worth, and choose to respond from a grounded place? The answer to that question determines whether you create calm or chaos in the relationship. Avoidants crave calm. They might not say it, but they feel it. And when you become that source of calm, it becomes easier for them to lean in. Emotional safety also comes from honesty without drama. If something bothers you, you express it clearly and kindly, not with blame, not with guilt trips, not with ultimatums. You say what you feel and what you need, and then you leave space for them to choose whether they can meet that need. That lack of emotional volatility is powerful because it removes fear. And for someone who fears being controlled, fear is the biggest barrier to intimacy. When you remove fear and replace it with trust, everything shifts. Suddenly, you're not the person demanding love. You're the person creating a space where love can grow naturally. When you focus on emotional safety instead of intensity, you stop trying to force moments and start building a foundation. You stop needing instant reassurance and start creating an environment where reassurance isn't even necessary because the relationship feels stable. That's when things begin to feel good for both people. It's not dramatic, it's not a roller coaster, it's calm. And calm is where real connection thrives, because when someone feels safe with you, they don't just stay, they choose to stay. And that choice comes from a place of genuine desire, not obligation. One of the most overlooked yet powerful things you can do when you're with someone who has avoidant tendencies is to create a life that feels full and meaningful without making them the center of it. When you make someone your entire world, even if you don't say it out loud, they feel it. They feel the weight of your happiness resting on their shoulders, and for an avoidant, that is one of the most terrifying feelings in the world. It reinforces their deepest fear, that closeness equals a loss of freedom and an overwhelming responsibility for someone else's emotions. When they sense that, they don't lean in. They pull away because the relationship begins to feel like a cage rather than a choice. But when you have a life that excites you, when your sense of joy doesn't depend entirely on what they do or don't do, you create an energy that is both attractive and liberating. It tells them that you are not trying to consume them. You are inviting them into a life that is already rich and vibrant. That energy is magnetic because it removes the pressure. Suddenly, being with you doesn't feel like a job. It feels like something they want to be part of because it adds to their life instead of taking from it. Having a full life isn't just about looking busy or filling your calendar with random things for the sake of appearing independent. It's about genuinely building a life you love. It's about friendships that bring you joy, passions that light you up, goals that matter to you. When you have those things, you naturally stop over-focusing on every little thing the other person does. You stop obsessing over the text they didn't send because your day is already filled with purpose. You stop overanalyzing their every move because you're too busy making moves of your own. That shift changes the entire dynamic because it replaces the energy of need with the energy of choice. You're no longer clinging to them for validation because you already feel validated by the life you're living. When you live this way, your conversations become different. Instead of every interaction revolving around the relationship or your fears about where it's going, you bring in stories from your day, things you're excited about, things you're working on. That makes the connection feel lighter, more enjoyable, and less pressured. You're not constantly asking for reassurance because your sense of worth isn't hanging by a thread that they control. You're grounded in yourself, and that grounding is what makes you so compelling. Avoidants are drawn to people who feel safe, and safety comes from stability. A person who knows their own value, who has their own life, and who doesn't need someone else to complete them, that person radiates stability. The irony is that when you stop making someone the center of your life, you often get more of their attention, not less. Why? Because now being around you feels good. It feels like freedom, not obligation. It feels like joy, not pressure. And people, especially avoidants, want to be where the energy feels good. They want to be with someone who makes their life better without demanding they give up who they are to do it. You become that person when you stop waiting for them to make your life interesting and start making it interesting yourself. And that doesn't just make you more attractive to them, it makes you more fulfilled, whether they're in the picture or not. Because a full life isn't just a strategy to get someone's attention. It's the foundation of your happiness. It's the thing that makes you unshakable, no matter who stays or who leaves.